Welcome to Reality is Undefeated. I'm at Gatewood. Thank you for tuning in. I am in Lake Tahoe in the raggediest room I've ever been in my life, but I'm here on work. So we just gonna rock with it. You know what I'm saying? If you see something crawling in the background, it was already a spider in my shower when I walked in. I gotta use the sunlight to record this because it ain't even a lamp in the room. This is the first hotel I've ever been in, any kind of room, Motel 6 or anything that did not have a lamp in the room, all right? So I'm gonna record this right now with this sunlight. Then I'm gonna walk over to Golden Nugget, get me some gumbo, get me some, clam chowder or something. And then I'm gonna go probably edit this chilling by the lake, you know what I'm saying? Anyhow, Brother Shatelko has given us a thought exercise, and I actually like the idea. Let me take this out of my ear before I continue. I actually like the thought exercise. This is something I can get with, man. If y'all got something, y'all think we should be discussing, man, definitely drop it in the comments, right? But I wrote some thoughts on it, okay? I read it the other day. I wrote some thoughts on it. Let me read to you guys, what Brother Shatelko has said. Of course, I don't have it already up because, it's not like I didn't know that I was going to read it to y'all. All right. Brother Shatelko says, this subject is a perfect opportunity to share with all a thought experiment I have been long pondering. It addresses the main theme in Brother Gatewood's presentation here. In quotes, I am advocating for a total separation of Black people from white culture. Although I think Brother Julie Woods was non-responsive to the crux of the video presentation, I do concur with his assertion that separate Black people from white culture, not possible. Also not possible to separate white people from Black culture, with the caveat that both groups occupy the same geographic area that is the United States of America. As Bro Gatewood knows, my position is that Black folk must out-migrate from this land of historic oppression, subjugation, violence, slavery, incarceration, and literally every negative that could possibly be subjected to a cultural subgroup. However, not only are there some logistical hurdles to my solution, there are many indoctrinated mental bondage issues as well, and I seek to explore that in this thought experiment. Let's go. I've done my share of world traveling. From age 9, I lived in another country for a couple of years, then 2 other countries. By age 13, I had lived on 4 continents. This experience obviously shapes my attitude, and it's important to point out that I fancy myself a shade tree historian of the Great Migration, of when half of all Americans of African slave ancestry, or AASA, using their own agency, escaped the American South, where over 95% resided, between 1900 and 1970. This exodus was without question the most beneficial event for Americans of African slave ancestry in the pathetic history of America. Because of my experience abroad, I have come into contact with other societies, and in particular, societies that make huge bets on the future, specifically some countries that actively invest in building entire cities from a clean sheet of paper before any residents is allowed to even move in. Commonly known as ghost cities by Westerners, referring to mega modern metropolises built by the Chinese government, ghost cities are vacant neighborhoods and sometimes whole cities that were built but never inhabited, at least not right away. To get a visual on what I'm talking about, take a look. This is an ultra-modern, ultra-luxury entire city that was built with no occupants. China has a whole lot of these ghost cities. But almost every country in Europe also has ghost cities, and other nations as well, but their ghost cities are really ghost towns, old cities that became abandoned as their population receded. In Italy, for example, they sell existing homes with sea views for $1. But I want to concentrate on Asian modern ghost cities, as some of them have been pre-built for populations exceeding 2 million residents. When I speak about the mass exodus / migration of Americans of African slave ancestry out of the American plantation, the main response I get from other Americans of African slave ancestry that are at least open to the idea is, but where are we going to go? The entire world is racist and hates Black people, so we might as well stay here. Well, when one has been brainwashed into believing they are an eternal paranoid victim where the whole world is against them, there is simply no hope. Even when I suggest that they travel and see for themselves, they refuse. Unfortunately, this mentality represents about 80% of Americans of African slave ancestry at the moment, but the other 20% are open to rational persuasion. This is where I point out. Look, we are a subgroup, not only in America, but the world. Although our ancestry is African, we were cut off from that cultural lineage long ago. We can't just show back up in Africa like an American of French descent can easily show back up in France. We are effectively stateless. We are effectively refugees without a home country. But we have the opportunity right now to establish a new home country. FUBU, for us, by us. Although very similar in situation, we don't need to do what those of post-World War II East European minority faith did to that area in the Middle East. And another falsehood we parrot, they ain't making no new land. Actually, they are making new land, but I digress. Yep, that's some crazy sounding shit right there, but it's absolutely true. We as a collective can actually purchase an independent, quasi-sovereign country, and it only takes about 1 million out of the 45 million of us to do so. This is straight up factual. And if 1 million of us can put together $100,000 each, which is nothing as we typically finance $100,000 worth of valueless brand name vehicles all the time, this computes to $100 billion. Wow, we have no idea whatsoever the power we have. Walk into any country in the world, except that place in the Sinai Desert, with 100 billion cash, and you will get attention. For the thought experiment, let's say we approach China and offer to purchase one of their unoccupied ghost cities that is already built for a population of 2 million residents, with the prerequisite that this property be a separate and sovereign jurisdiction. Of course, some person will say, but China is an evil communist country. They won't agree to this. This is the person who has never been anywhere and knows nothing at all but the mental enslavement of America. The fact is China does do this. Example, Macau, population 700,000 with a higher GDP than Black America. Chinese national law does not generally apply in the region, and Macau is treated as a separate jurisdiction. To move things along here, let's say we have 1 million Americans of African slave ancestry who are ready with the $100,000 each to purchase their/our own country. The deal is consummated with China. Note that these 100,000 Americans of African slave ancestry do not need to live in the Chinese Principality of New Black permanently, nor even full-time. But since New Black is an autonomous region, and here's the rub, the 100,000 Americans of African slave ancestry must now govern their own nation. Sure, they are living in an area with zero crime, zero racism, some of the best free healthcare on the planet, no background stress, no incarceration criminal justice industrial complex, a wealth index that places the residents of New Black not only above the white citizens of America, but in the top 3% of nations in the world, no crime whatsoever, a place where children are free to safely roam the streets, where the education system for Black children is exponentially superior to that of America. Literally a home, a heaven where a former American of African slave ancestry can achieve pure dignity. But in my thought simulation, I predict that things go negative very quickly. Not because of the outside forces, but because, as it said, you can take us out of the country, but you can't take the country out of us. Just like Liberia, we have been so socialized with the toxic poison that is the American culture and how it is fatal to everyone it touches. We quickly replicate the divided, insane asylum that is America, because that is all we know. And left to ourselves, it is inevitable. If any one of us on a small scale, like individually or perhaps one's family, relocate into another culture, we will absorb that culture. If one of us relocate to Rwanda, we would be shunned if we attempted to act in our Native American ways. The overwhelming social pressure would change us. We will become peaceful citizens who cared about our other fellow citizens. But if we are just lifted and shifted as a group into another geo-environment where we are concentrated, I just don't think it could survive. I don't think we, even just 4% of our best and brightest, could survive. We would implode under the best of circumstances. Even though it's an absolutely viable option as we speak in today's modern world, what I am saying is there is no hope whatsoever for our plight as a group. But at the individual/family level, there is. Again, just a thought experiment. That could be a good book or movie premise. What do you think? I think it's absolutely viable. I think it could work. But in my opinion, 3 things would absolutely have to be in place before large amounts of us were to inhabit such a land. As you know, this is the only idea of out-migrating that I have ever supported. For us, by us. There is nothing that I want more for my people than to have land to call our own. There is no true freedom without it. Not going to another country and setting up camp. Not going back to an African country that tells me I gotta wait 10 years before I could be a citizen. No, going to a place that is designated for us. I've spoken on this sentiment in numerous videos. Most recently, I spoke about reparations needing to be about land. All free people have land of their own. My apprehensions with our people just picking up and moving to a different country is well documented. I'll spare you guys the time it would take to explain my position again and just link the videos down below. Let's get into it. Brother Shatelko, the first thing that would absolutely have to be in place is what you have already stated. The land that we purchase would have to include a pre-built or ghost city. I know a lot of people are going to jump in their feelings when I say this, but I'm going to say it anyway, because I don't give no fucks. The majority of our people do not have it in them to build anything from scratch. And some would argue that we shouldn't have to build anything from scratch, and I'd agree. It's why I take the fight, not flight path in any other scenario. But I believe most of us, if given the opportunity, will remain in our U.S. cities, in our modern U.S. homes, with the shopping centers and parks and schools and places for social gathering already in place, and deal with whatever that brings our way, than to live in undeveloped or underdeveloped areas, even if we own and govern them. Most of us would not give up our good-paying U.S. jobs to go and work or build a business on our own land. But in the scenario that you've given, one wouldn't have to. The land would have to be ready-made because there are too many options across the globe that already afford our people a comfortable lifestyle, albeit under the rule of a different people. Most of our people don't have a problem abiding by the laws, rules, and regulations of a land. So Singapore, Tokyo, Lagos, Nairobi, Paris and London, New York, LA, Las Vegas sound a lot more appealing than undeveloped New Black. Now, if New Black was, as we like to say, ready to go, then bingo, we got action. The second thing is the right people have to be selected to set the culture, and this culture has to be established for quite some time before other Americans of African slave ancestry who, as Smokey said, didn't put in on this were invited to join us in New Black. I agree that even the best and brightest of us, if taken directly from the U.S., would do nothing but set up a culture that mimics that of the U.S. That's why, my brother Shatelko, the first inhabitants would have to be people like yourself. Those who have long been separated from U.S. culture and can put in place a set of values that have proven to be beneficial in other places that you've previously inhabited. I've always imagined such a place being led by a council of elders who are chosen by the people and only replaced after their time on earth has come to an end. I'd actually be curious to know what leadership models many of you think would work. Lastly, and most importantly, amongst the first inhabitants would have to include some of the strongest men that our communities have to offer. I'm not necessarily talking about physically strong, but strong mentally, strong-willed, strong morality, men with strong belief, strong character, men that have a presence about them. I don't know when it happened. I'm guessing sometime in the 80s. But at some point, the older men in our communities became afraid of the younger men. That cannot be the case on any land that we call our own. We can't look out the window and see young brothers up to some nonsense and close the blinds and act like we ain't see nothing. We can't watch someone commit a heinous crime and be afraid to speak about it on our own land. There are young men in our communities today that walk around unchecked. No, we have to have the OGs. We have to have the men that's going to see what's going on outside and not close the blinds, but walk outside to see what's going on. Diffuse the situations. Tell them that shit ain't going to fly around here. And mean it. Stand on it. We can't have men in our New Black communities afraid to check misbehaving children. We can't have men around that are unwilling to protect our women. If these type of men aren't present at the birth of New Black, then it's not going to work. Because eventually there will be crime. There will be drugs brought into the community. There will be everything that is present in most cities around the world today. And we have to be in position to combat it from jump. But I love the idea. It's very unlikely, but it's very much possible, and it's very much something that I will be 100% on board with. But y'all let me know what y'all think about Brother Shatelko's thought experiment. Let me know how y'all see it working out, if y'all see it working out at all. And if you don't see it working, let us know why that's your position. I think it's a good discussion to be had. Anyway, man, I'm about to come up out of this hot sweatshirt, go get my gumbo, and walk to the lake. Subscribe to the channel, man.